Okay, Gopal, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay, right. So, yes, going ahead with this document. So, these are the two documents that are available in sdm.sap.com. So, I just downloaded them and even I learned about these real-time jobs and how to manipulate the XML data using these two documents. So, I'll go through the different scenarios that are provided. So, I'll be sharing these documents with you as well. So that you can just go through the theory part, because it talks about what is an XML file, document DTD, so document type definition. So I'm not just taking you through all these definitions because that you might be knowing already. XML is a structured query. This is a nested language, so you can see this address, flat 1, flat 2, and flat 3 are within the comments, within the tags, what we call them in XML language. So advantages, disadvantages this notes has, so I'll be sharing this notes with you. So what we need to do is, first we need to understand how do we attach an XML file to the data services system. So earlier we used to add flat files to the BODS system. Now I think we have done adding one XML file to the BODS system, which is for XML pipe generation transformation. So today we will be looking at adding various different files to the data services system, and how do we just manipulate the XML data, like how do we convert the XML data into a tabular structure. So how does first XML structure look like, then how do we understand or how do we interpret the XML data, and how do we write it back into the database tables and read the data from the database tables and write it back into an XML file. So we'll be just seeing all these different things. So I'm creating a new project. Okay, just for this jobs I'm just creating a separate project. So if you remember, we have seen adding this postcode address. So I'll just repeat. The ways you can add an XML file into this designer is right click here, go for a new, and go for XML schema. Then now we are in the local object library formats tab. Right click in the blank area, go for new and go for XML schema. The other one is select the XML schema, right click and go for new. Or the third one is go to projects, new, XML schema. So these are the different ways that we can do, but something that is friendly is you can select the schema, right click and go for new. So once you go there, click on browse, and these are the XML source files that are available for me. So I have downloaded these from these documents, which I'll be sharing with you along with the document. So if you look at the first page, okay, so supplements files that are available for download, because some flat file you can create, but XML file I don't know how to create, but because that is a rare file. So these sample files are already provided for us so that we can utilize this one. So select the file, okay, click on open, then go to the root element, select the root element, copy the same name and give it in the format name, and just click on OK. Your file will be added here. Now okay, you see the file is added. Just delete this, we'll add it when it is required. So first one that we need to add is the postcode address, and the first job that we'll be looking at right now is how to read the data from an XML file and load it into the database table. Okay, so yeah, here are the screenshots talking about this one. Alright, so we'll look at this job now, how to read the data from the database tables and put it into the flat file format or a table structure format. How to read the data from an XML file and put it into the database table. So this is scenario 1 that we'll be looking at now. So just give me a second. Okay, so here is the first job that we are going to create. Job read write XML. Right click, new batch job. So now we are using this XML file in the batch job. Okay, so there are two differences that I told you, two thumb rules when you are using an XML file. One is when you are using it in a batch job, you should make it as a file source or as a file target. And when you are using that in a real-time job, you should use it as a message source or message target. So this is how your XML file look like. So it is not a normal table structure. So normal table structure is this one. Okay, so this is how your normal table structure will look. So you have the table and all the columns that are present here, but XML file is a little different. So it has the data that is present in the nested structure. So this is like a header and line item. So for every header, the postcode, there are multiple addresses. So this is how we understand the data. For a particular postal code, there are multiple addresses. So there are, in this example, there are 2 postal codes and 5 addresses. So 3 for the first postcode and 2 for the second postcode. Now create a data flow. I call this as data flow read XML. Now go to the Formats tab, select the XML file. Now remember, when you are using this XML file in a batch job, you have to make it as a file source or as a file target. So that is thumb rule number 1. Thumb rule number 2 is whenever you use an XML file, do not forget to specify the file from where you are trying to extract that. So we have to specify the path of the file that is available on the desktop. So now if you go back and see, you can see the magnifying glass, and if you click it, you get the postcode group. There are 2 postal codes. First postal code has 3 addresses and the second postal code has 2 addresses. Okay, now we will be reading this nested structure data and putting it into an XML file. Into a database table. So this is query transformation, a nest, and connect it with the XML file source. Open the query transformation, select from postcode group, drag and drop it on the schema out. We did this earlier, so make it current, check from the front tab. So one thing that you need to remember is when you are working with an XML file, so each and every segment, we call this as segments, each and every segment has a separate from tab. So if you look at this one, this is postcode group, but if I go to this, make it current, so this is group underscore nt underscore 1. So each and every segment has a different from tab. In fact, all these conditions of this one query transformation will differ from segment to segment. So first make it current, then unnest that one. So you are just removing the segment by checking the unnest, and select the second segment, right click, make it current, unnesting. So we are unnesting the root nodes and putting that in the same level. So you call the table as, one second, XML unnest. In the target data store. Now save this job and now execute this job. The first exercise that we are trying to do here is read the data from an XML file and write it back into the database table. So the job is completed successfully, and if you see this output, these are the 5 records. For the first postcode, you have 3 addresses, and for the second postcode, you have 2 addresses. And this is how your job will read the data from an XML file, unnest the data, and write it back into the database table. So that is scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 is a little different. Now we will try to read the data from the postcode address and get a postcode as separate and address as separate into separate tables. Now we are trying to split a single XML file into multiple into 2 different database tables. So in the first table we will be trying to capture this one postcode, and the second table we will be trying to capture the address. Okay, so now go to this one. Just create another job, then call it as job underscore read underscore XML split. So create a data flow and call it as df underscore XML underscore split. So use this postcode address, make it as a file source, specify the path from where it is available on your desktop. Click on OK. Let's go back. Now add a query transformation called add underscore ID, because we need to add a new output column like called postcode ID to identify the proper postcode. Because what we'll be trying to do is, now if you look at this particular data, so I'm going to capture these two postcodes. The first one, these two postcodes, okay, this one and this one, these two postcodes into one table, and I'm going to capture these 5 addresses into another table. And in future, when I have to join them back, I should need a reference key to join these two tables. So that is the reason I am creating a new output column called address postcode ID. So select the postcode group from here, drag and drop it to the schema out, make it current, and right click, go for a new output column and call it as postcode underscore ID. So it is an integer, it's okay, and try to populate that with generate row number function. So for every postcode that it triggers, it generates a new row number. So we have to get 2 row numbers, 1 and 2. Alright, so now here get underscore postcode is the first one, and second one is get underscore address. Create a table and call it as demo underscore postcode, save it in the target data store, and demo underscore address and save it in the target data store. Connect this job. First let us complete the framework, because once we complete the framework we will foresee how the job is going, and we can also try to improve the design structure by first you have to foresee what you are trying to do and then you have to do. So go to the postcode, take this one as this, can no just give me a second. Okay, so this has to be properly assigned, if not it will just be counted as that one. So here make a new output column and insert below postcode ID and populate with generate row number function. Okay, yeah. So now select the postcode ID directly from here and one second, just give me a second. I have to create a new output column, and that new output column should come under this postcode group. But in our job it is coming outside this one, so that is the mistake. That will not get the proper value. Alright, so first let me unlist this one, and then okay, make a new output column, insert below and call this as postcode underscore ID integer and generate with the row number function. and just go back. Now I already nested that, and I should be able to drag it directly. So I get the postcode and the postcode ID into the schema out, and I get the postcode ID and address into the schema out, and I make it current and I unlist this one here. So now I get the postcode and address in separate tables. Save this job, validate this one. So I just repeat what I have done. I have added a new ID called postcode ID here. So before that I have to unlist this one so that these two will be on the same level, because for every postcode that it generates, it will generate a unique postcode ID. And here I am trying to get, sorry, not this one. Right. So here I'm trying to get the postcode ID and the postcodes, the postcode demo postcode table, and here we are trying to get the postcode ID and the address. And again I'm nesting this one. We are nesting, removing the structure there. So now when I execute this job, one table will get the postcode ID and address, postcode ID and address, and the second table should get the postcode IDs and postal codes. So if you look at this one, this is wrong. It should not come like this. It should come as 1 and 2. So there's something that we need to do here. Make it current and alright, so alright, so just let me cross check this one. Okay. We map the columns and remap column. Now let us execute this job once again and see the difference. Now you see, for the first postcode it is getting the value 1, and for the second postcode it is getting the value 2. The mistake that I have done earlier is I did not make it current. Okay, so when I am generating the new output column, this one, I did not make this current. So what it did is it was trying to take it at the add ID level. So that is the reason why it is getting only one value, because add ID is only one segment, and here if you make it current and do it, it is getting two values now, 1 and 2. Similarly, if you look at the addresses, for the first three addresses we have 1, and for the remaining two addresses we have 2. So this is how you split the data into multiple database tables from an XML file. Now, step number 3 that we need to see is, the exercise number 3 is, we read the data from these database tables and try to write them into the XML file. Okay, so let us go back and go to this first data flow, first job, and create a data flow and call it as df underscore write underscore XML. Right, so here I go to the target database and select the tables demo address and demo postcode, and we are writing it into a file called postcode address 2. So we need to attach that file to the PODS system. So this is the file, and the postcode address is the root element, and the file name is postcode address 2. Click on OK. Now the file is added here, postcode address 2. Drag and drop it and make it as a file target, because we are trying to read the data from this database tables and write it into an XML file. So if you open this one, we have the postcode group, postcode address, and we have one more segment called created by, created date, and create comments. So before that, just select an output path where you want to create this one. So just let me XML sources. Right. So just let me create a special folder here. Morning out. So all the outputs I'll be creating in this one. Okay. So the output of this file name is postcode address 2.xml. Save it. So when it is XML file source, you get an open option here, and when it is an XML file target, you get a save option here. So I specify the path. Now you see one more extra segment is present, document details. So we need to populate that, and as I told you in the beginning, when we have an extra segment or an extra table and we don't have the data coming in from the source, we can utilize this one, row generation, to populate the data into that particular segment. So use a query transformation and call it as next_data. Connect it with your sources and connect it with your target table. Now all the schema out, the target table structure is available, and all the schema in the source structure is available. First, go to this one, make it current, and go to the From tab and see if all these things are present. So this postcode and address is not required, only row generation is enough. Then go to the postcode group. So we just did for the nest_data, we just gave the row generation. Then go to the postcode group, make it current, and you don't have any from here. So select the postcode, demo postcode, and drag and drop it here. And go to the address, make it current, and select demo address and drag and drop it here. Go to the document details, make it current, and drag and drop row generation here. So document details will be hard coding the values here. Okay, the author name was created by Samuel. Created date is sysdate, and document created comments is training on real-time jobs. Okay, so I can give it as a 50-character line string here. Now, if you go to this first post, so this one is done. We gave it from where it is getting the values, and we gave comments created by created date and creation comments. So we gave this one first. Then we go to the postcode group, make it current, and you have to do a mapping. So map the postcode to the postcode. Okay, we are mapping the postcodes to the postcode directly. Let's go to the postcode address and make it current, and we have to map the address to the address directly. But how do we know that when the first postcode is getting, it should get the remaining 3 addresses? So here in the where clause, we have to mention that where the postcode ID of the address table is equal to the postcode ID of the postcode table. So is this clear? So we are doing a mapping from postcode to postcode. So because there are 2 postcodes and there are no sub values there, so postcodes will be directly assigned. So postcode 1 and postcode 2 will be directly assigned. But when it gets to address, so address is specific to a postcode. So that is the reason why we have created this postcode ID earlier to join these 2 things. Now validate this job if there are any errors. No. Then execute this job. Now this one, I guess, yeah, write XML, df_write XML. Okay, now the job is successfully completed. If you go, this one, the file is created, and just XML sources, morning out is the one that we have created, and this is the XML file that is generated. You can open that with directly web page, or you can open that with the notepad and see the data. right? As you ask me later. And now if you see, now the block contents, yes. Now if you see this one, the first postcode SA019TB, and these are the second postcode. Okay, so if you first expand the first postcode, you see three addresses for the first postcode, and D150LQ, the second postcode, it has two addresses, and you can see the comments that we have given, created on today's date and training on real-time jobs. Okay, so now this is how you write the data into a database, from a database tables into an XML file. You can also open that with a notepad and see the values here. So this is a little difficult till you understand this one. This is the postcode, and these are the three addresses: flat 1 block C, flat 2 block C, and flat 3 block C. And this is the second postcode, and Eaton Hall and the Garden Cottages, these are the two addresses, and created by Samuel, system date, and training on real-time jobs. Alright, so this is how you write the data into an XML file using BODS, and you read the data from a database tables. So this is one scenario. Now we will see one more scenario where we will be writing the data into a database table, but the data is saved in an XML format. Okay, so now we wrote the data from the database tables into an XML file. So obviously the data is saved in an XML format. Now we will see one more scenario where we will read the data from the database tables and write it into a database table, but the data that is saved in the database table is saved in an XML format. Okay, so next is that example that we need to see. Okay, so the data flow name is, job name is write DB XML. So job write database XML is the job name. Let us create a job. Right, so and let us create a data flow, write database XML. Alright, so now we just need to have the same structure. So reusability, now let us look at the concept called reusability. So instead of creating this one, I'll delete this one. Okay, so just give me a second. I'll just copy this name and I'll delete this one. Okay, so you'll see the reusability concept now. So I want to use this data flow. Okay, so once you delete from the list here, it will be shown with the cross mark, red cross mark. Delete this one, and yeah, okay, so not this. Alright, so I want to reuse this data flow, write df write XML. So go to the data flow, df write XML. Okay, I want to reuse this data flow, but if you just drag and drop this data flow into some other job and do changes, this job which already has the same data flow will be affected, because you cannot do changes for the same data flow in other job. For example, I'm trying to use this in this other data flow, and if I try to delete this one, so automatically to the previous job, if you go to the previous job, that particular data flow will be, that particular data flow will be affected, and this file will be missing. So you have to create a copy of this one to do a reusability. So how do we create a copy? Select the data flow, right click, and just go for replicate. So copy one underscore df1 is present now. So rename that one and give another name. Now if you do changes in this data flow, the rename data flow, it will not impact the actual job. Okay, that is the trick and the difference here. So here I am trying to use this one. So now if df write XML, so I'll show you it here only. Okay, so I'm trying to delete this one here, but if you go and see here, it will not be deleted because we created a replication of this data flow and we saved the copy of this data flow. Now, just let me put this in this structure, job structure. Now, okay, nest data, add new level, convert to varchar, and demo DB XML. These are the different stages that we need to do. So, first one is add level. We add this one because when we want to write the data from this coming out of this nested data schema into a database table, it is not enough, so we need to add one more level. So what we do is add a query transformation, call it as add level. Till now we were copying from postcode group. Now we will copy from nest underscore data. Alright, so I copied the entire structure. Now the next step is convert to varchar. Okay, I want to convert this values into the varchar values so that I'll write it into the target database as a string. So demo DB XML is the table name. Save it in the target data store. Now, let's go and see what are the different steps that we need to do. First one is adding a new level. So we have to copy from the nest underscore data and drag and drop it into the new level. And next one is, sorry, we need to create a new output column called XML underscore data and give the value for that as 1000. Okay, so create a new output column, call this as XML underscore data and call it as varchar 1000, because now remember we are trying to write the data into the database table in an XML format. So it requires this one. Then go to functions, conversion functions. One second, is that, yeah. So load to XML and click on next. Now nested table structure, add level, nest underscore data. Right, select this, and DTD schema that you are trying to write is postcode address 2. And enable validation, you can give it as 0 when you don't want validation. XML header, give 2 null spaces, 2 single quotes. Replace null string with 2 single quotes. This is not double quotes, remember these are 2 single quotes. And each top level element, you can give it as 1, and maximum size of the string is 1000. So click on finish, and this XML code is written automatically, and now this is pushed into the target database table in an XML format. So just save this job. I just repeat what I did. I utilized the previous data flow and I added one more level and dragged it from here to this one. Then convert to varchar. I'm adding a new output column and I'm using a function to populate this one. So to see this changes, you want to do some changes on this one, select on the mapping tab and select on the code that is available here, right click and go for modify function call. And if you want to do some changes, you can do some changes here. Okay, even for lookup ext we can do this. Select, go to the code, right click and go for a modify function call. So if you are calling any function, you can modify that here. Alright, so now let us execute this job. So real-time jobs are something that are very rarely used, not all the time, but just in case if you get the data that is in the form of an XML file, you guys should be ready to understand these jobs. Now if you see this one, the XML code is written and I can click on view cell to show the data here that this is the first postcode, address 1, address 2 and address 3, and second postcode, address 1 and address 2, and it is created by Samuel on system date and training on this one. So now you see it is written into a database table, but the data that is written here is in the XML format. Okay, so it's manipulations. Like, what are the possible manipulations that you can do? We are trying to read here. So next one is create a job. Okay, create a data flow in the same one. df underscore read underscore db underscore XML. So here we are writing the data into the database table in XML format. Now we will try to read the data from that particular file and write it back into an XML format. Alright, so this is the table. Make it as your source. So just drag and drop a template table, it will become your source. Now let us go to the document and see what are the steps that has to be done. Extract underscore XML is the first query transformation. Then we are trying to create a new function call, and within the function call, conversion functions extract from XML, and XML field name, postcode address 2, enable validation. Right. Alright, so now let us look at this. Create an XML query transformation and call this as extract underscore XML and connect it with your source database table. Now you know that the database is available in the form of the data that is available in the form of an XML code in your database table. So now close this. Okay, extract from XML. So here I'm not trying to drag it or do something. I'm trying to populate a new function call. Okay, select the schema out, extract underscore XML, right click and go for a new function call. And if you look at the conversion functions, you have extract from XML function. Click on next and select the drop down and select XML underscore data here. The schema to which you are trying to load is postcode address 2, and enable validation, we keep it as 0 and click on next. So select the postcode, move it to the right side, and document detail, move it to the right side. So there are two segments that we are trying to display. So we don't want all error number or all error message. So click on finish and you see the same structure populated here, but we are not getting it directly from the source, but we are trying to get it from the function. Make a new function call. So extract from XML, click on next, select the schema, XML field, data underscore XML, this is the source from where we have to get the data, and this is the target structure to which we have to write the data, and enable validation, we give it as 0, and once you click on finish, this structure is available. And to create your own XML files, okay, so here on the right hand side tool palette, you have a template XML. So you call it as extract underscore XML. Click on OK. Connect it with XML, extract XML query transformation, and specify the path where it has to be saved. So okay, so I'm saving this as a .xml file, and extract underscore XML is the file name. Click on save. Now execute this job once again. So now in this task, what we are trying to do is we are trying to read the data from a database table, but the data that is written in an XML format, and try to write it into the XML file. So go to this particular folder, XML sources, warning out, and you see extract XML is present here. So open this one, extract XML. Now you see the same data is present. Postcode 1, address 123, and second postcode, address 1 and 2, and the comments that we have given. Package Samuel, address, and the postcode, the purpose of the document. So this is how we can write the data in a database table, okay, data in a database table which is in the XML format into an XML file directly. So this document is quite useful. It is just like manipulating with the XML data. So what are the different things that you can do? How are the different ways that you can play around with the XML file? So just a quick recall, the first scenario that we have seen is reading the data. It's a very simple thing, reading the data from an XML file, okay, and writing it back to the database table. So this is the first scenario that we have seen. We read the data from postcode address, did an earnest, and loaded that into the database table. The second scenario that we did is read the data from the postcode address, and we added a new ID called postcode ID, and we got a separate postcode and separate addresses. And in the next one, we try to join that once again when we write the data from the database table into the XML files. So this is the third scenario that we have seen. We read the data from the database tables and wrote it back to the postcode address tree. We use the row generation because there is one more segment called document details. Yeah, Jay, sure. So I'm just recalling. So you want me to go once again through this recall a little slow? Alright, so perfect. The first thing is reading the data from an XML file, okay, and write it back into the database table. So first, if somebody gives you a XML file, so now we have seen how do we extract the data from that XML file and write it back into the database table. So we just added a query transformation, unlist. I'll open the job for you. Okay, so we added a query transformation here, and we made every segment current and did an unlist on top of that. So go to the next segment, make it current and unlist that one. So that we are removing the nested structure and making it into a plain structure. So when it goes to the target table, it is in a plain structure rather than the nested structure. So first example is we read the data from the database XML file and wrote it back to the database table. The second example that we did is we read the data from the same XML file, but we added an extra ID to get the data into two separate tables, demo address and demo postcode. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to split the data from one single XML file into two database tables. Okay, so here I think we have this data flow here. Now here what we did is first unlist this one. Okay, remember, first unlist this one and then create a new output column and call it as postcode ID and populate that particular postcode ID with generate row number function. And remember, each segment has a separate from tab here. Okay, each segment has a separate from tab, keep that in mind. And here you populate this one. Now once you go back, go to the get postcode, you select the postcode directly and postcode ID from the source and go to the next one, get address. So you cannot just drag only the address here. So what you need to do is like get postcode and get from the segment and unlist the segment so that you have only the postcode ID and address here. And you are loading that into two different tables. Postcode into one table and address into the other table. The next example that we have seen here is writing that into an XML file. Okay, so now we read that data into two different file tables. Now we read the data from two different tables and write it back into an XML file. So just let me check which data flow is that. Alright, so we are reading the data from these two different database tables and load it into XML file. So first you need to do is like drag and drop these tables, connect. We are using row generation because it has an extra segment document details. So connect all these things from the left hand side and the right hand side. Now open nest underscore data, go to each and every segment, make it current, and check the from tab, and then you do a direct mapping, and here do a direct mapping from the address, and now you have to give a where condition as well because you need to get a respective postcode for this address. So we join that with the condition postcode ID is equal to the postcode ID from address table to the postcode table, and then go to the last segment, which is document details, do a hard code. We are giving the values, default values, hard code values here, saying that this is created by Rakesh Samuel. So you have to keep that in single quotes, remember, when it is a varchar, and created on the system date, and comments again you have to put it in single quotes and give. Now once you review this, you are trying to write the data from a database table into an XML file. So that is one scenario. And the next one is the same job we are trying to do a little modification and write the data into the database table, but the data is written in the form of an XML file. Okay, this is reading the data from a database table, writing the data into a database table, but the format of the data is a little different. So we wrote that in an XML file format. Okay, so this is the job where we just took the previous job structure and then we added a new level, extracted this, dragged this from nest underscore data and dropped it into the add new level. Then we added one more query transformation and created a new output column called XML underscore data, and we used this conversion function. Okay, so conversion function, load to XML, and we just gave the values, and this function is populated, and this function will write the data into the database table, but the data is written in the form of an XML file. The next task is to read the data from an XML file and write it back into, read the data from a database table which is in the XML file and write it back into the XML file. So I'm taking extract from XML, and I just took a new function call, and I took the conversion functions, extract from XML, and here you have to select the XML field on which you are trying to do. This is XML underscore data, and the schema structure is postcode address 2, and then enable validation and click on next. Automatically the structure is created. Now when you execute, this extract underscore XML file is created in the path where you specify that. Okay, that is one more example. Okay, that concludes this document number 1, which is like manipulating the XML data. Right, so this is document number 1, manipulating XML data. So what we will do is tomorrow we will start a little late. Okay, generally we start at 7 a.m. IST, so tomorrow we will start at 7:30 or 8 a.m. IST. 7:30, is that okay? Because I'm traveling tonight, and I'll be reaching Guntur by tomorrow morning 6:30 or 7. So maximum we will postpone it to half an hour, 7:30, and we will try to start the class by 7:30, and we will complete the second one, which is real-time jobs. Then once we are done with that, we will go and look at the first part of the project orientation, which is this one, AMO methodology. Yeah, this one, the AMO methodology, project orientation, naming conventions, and all this thing. The first part we will look at this one. We will start it a little late. Okay, we will start it at 7:30. Generally, we start it at 7 a.m. IST. Tomorrow's class we will start at 7:30, so that I can reach home and I can be available in front of the system. Because the travels promise that they will reach me by 6:30 or 6:45, but just I'm keeping some buffer. if in case if the bus gets delayed or something. Okay, so we'll catch up tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. IST. So Rishabh, I think Jay and Rishabh, you guys have to, you know, do a little late tomorrow because that will be a Friday night, so that should not be a problem. Is that okay? Is that okay with you guys? I'm just talking, so just confirm me. Is that okay with all of you, so that we can start a little late, a half an hour late from daily schedule? What about Gopal and Vaishali? Jay? All right, so yeah. Yeah, we will have only 1 hour session, Rishabh. So if you guys have patience, then we'll extend it. Nothing like that. Not trying to force things on your head so that I should complete my thing and wipe off my hands. It's nothing like that. So we'll go on a slow phase and we will just have 1 hour session so that you can enjoy your Friday night as well. Well, guys, thanks for your time, and we'll catch up tomorrow. So for Rishabh, I'll mail you this document now, and for the rest of the guys, I already gave it to Prakash, and Prakash will be sharing this with you. Okay, so we'll catch up tomorrow, a half an hour late. All right, thanks guys, thanks for your time, and thanks for your cooperation. Have a good day and good night ahead.